Yeah, okay. Good evening, dear participants. Today is the first day for our two-day national level webinar on translation studies. This is Thiruvalluvar University Constituent College, Kallakurichi, conducting the two-day national level webinar. I am so proud of it. Being an organizer, I'm very proud of it. I'm Dr. Sangeeta, Head PG Department of English, Thiruvalluvar University Constituent College, Kallakurichi, and I feel immensely honored to deliver this welcome address, and I feel very happy to thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor and our respected registrars, Dr. Syed Shafi, for allowing us to do the two-day national level webinar, and I welcome all our fellow participants. Without them, the program would be nothing. Their active participation in our webinars is the encouragement to us to do the webinars. Next, I welcome our keynote advisor, Mr. Abhimanyu Dev Singh Belavaria from Kashmir. Welcome, sir. Next, I welcome our resource person from Coimbatore, Mrs. Ubanisha Raghuvaran, spoken English trainer. Welcome, ma'am. First, I would like to give a brief introduction about the translation studies. Translation studies is the field of study that deals with the theory, description and application of translation, because it examines translation not only as interlingual transfer but also as intercultural communication. It can also be described as an interdiscipline which touches on other diverse fields of knowledge, including comparative literature, cultural studies, gender studies, computer science, history, linguistics, philosophy, rhetoric and semiotics. Translation studies is often paired with interpreting, although the two are distinct fields in this. Although translators from the Romans have had much to say about the theory and practice of translation, it was not until the 20th century that translation studies emerged as a formal academic discipline. James S. Holmes, 1972, landmark paper entitled "The Name and Nature of Translation Studies" was the foundational statement of translation studies, and it called for the creation of a distinct discipline with its own system of classification. Translation studies entails the systematic examination of translation, both as an applied practice and also a means of understanding the movement and transfer between diverse languages and cultures. Translation studies deals with the practical experiences of the translator. It also explores from theoretical and methodological perspectives the history and philosophy of translation, as well as current trends in the field. It may examine the practices and context of translating texts that are specialist, legal, business and medical, etc., etc. It also may explore the art of translation as a creative act in literary translation and international marketing. And this translation may also explore how issues of culture, power, gender, ethics and medium affect the act of translating. The study of these enables students to apply their theoretical understanding to the approaches, techniques and choices that are used daily as a practicing translator. YouTube not working, huh? So this is it. And the study of translation usually includes the analysis of key texts, enabling students to develop an awareness of the problems of understanding and interpretation. It also involves the development of the analytical, practical, evaluative, aesthetic and expository skills, practical translation skills, and the ability to develop strategies for managing complex linguistic and cultural transactions. The discipline of translation studies has grown alongside the introduction of university schools and courses, relevant conferences, translation journals and other translation related publications also. So the skills of translation are becoming even ever more important and desirable as today's multicultural and multilingual society demands effective, efficient and empathetic communication between languages and cultures. So this is it. And translation is necessary for the spread of information, knowledge and ideas. It is absolutely necessary for effective and empathetic communication between different cultures. Translation, therefore, it is a critical harmony and peace. And translation is also the only medium through which people come to know different works that expand their knowledge. Literary studies have also moved on from an early and more elitist view of translation. As Peter Franz, editor of the Oxford Guide to Literature in English Translation, points out, theorists and scholars have a far more complex agenda than deciding between the good and the bad. They are concerned, for instance, to tease out the different possibilities open to the translator and the way these change according to the historical, social and cultural context. So this is these are the words of Peter Franz. So there is a growing body of research that reflects this newer, more complex agenda for as research in translation studies increases and historical data become more readily available. So important questions are starting to be asked about the role of translation in shaping a literary canon, the strategies employed by translators and the norms in operation at a given point in time, the discourse of translators, the problems of measuring the impact of translations, and most recently the problems of determining an ethics of translation. Perhaps the most exciting new trend of all is the expansion of discipline of translation studies beyond the boundaries of Europe. In Canada, India, Hong Kong, China, and Africa, Brazil, and Latin America, the concerns of scholars and translators have diverged significantly from those of Europeans. More emphasis has been placed on the inequality of the translation relationship with the writers such as Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, Tejaswini Niranjana and Eric Chaffetz, arguing that translation was effectively used in the past as an instrument of colonial domination, a means of depriving the colonized people of a voice. For in the colonial model, one culture dominated and the others were subservient. Hence, translation reinforced that power hierarchy. As Anuradha Dingwani puts it as her words, Anuradha's words are, the processes of translation involved in making another culture comprehensible entail varying degrees of violence, especially when the culture being translated is constituted as that of the other. So this is the words of Anuradha. And in the new post-colonial perception of the relationship between source and target texts, that inequality of status has been rethought. Both original and translation are now viewed as equal products of the creativity of writer and translator, though as Paz pointed out, the task of these two is different. It is up to the writer to fix words in an ideal, unchangeable form, and it is the task of the translator to liberate those words from the confines of their source language and allow them to live again in the language in which they are translated. So the common threads that link the many diverse ways in which translation has been studied over the past 2 decades are an emphasis on diversity, a rejection of the old terminology of translation as faithlessness and betrayal of an original, the foregrounding of the manipulative powers of the translator, and a view of translation, a bridge building across the space between source and target. And the celebration betweenness, which scholars from outside the field of translation have also stressed, reflects the changing nature of the world we live in. Once upon a time, it was deemed to be unsafe and undesirable to occupy a space that was neither one thing nor the other, a no man's land with no precise identity. Today, in the 21st century, political, geographical and cultural boundaries are perceived as more fluid and less constraining than at any time in recent history, and the movement of people across those boundaries is increasing now. In such a world, the role of the translator takes on a greater significance, and this is the reason why translation is so avidly discussed and in such demand. We have barely begun to imagine the potential for translation with the expansion of the World Wide Web. As electronic translation becomes more sophisticated, so translation studies will need to develop. So it seems set to do so far the foreseeable future. So this is a brief introduction to the